we've developed a lot of good relationships. We now have a very solid handle on what can be done with today's current technology. We've become very aware of the differences in decortication technology and the pluses and minuses. And so at this point, I think that the industry is ready to take that next step. As soon as people really invest in hemp refining facilities, it's going to explode very quickly. Right now, that's the bottleneck. You have a lot of farmers that want to grow, but they really know there aren't a lot of processing centers to take it to.
That's Shane Pritchard, Chief Engineer and co-founder of Hemp Processing Partners. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I will be talking to Shane Pritchard along with his VP of Business Development, Bill Brill. We'll hear all about Hemp Processing Partners, how they got started, where they're headed, and how they are working to provide large-scale industrial hemp processing solutions here in the U.S. and around the world. And after we talk to the guys from Hemp Processing Partners, we're going to have a quick call with Fred Strathmeyer. He's the Pennsylvania Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, and he's going to tell us what's in store for us at the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit, November 14th and 15th in Harrisburg. So we'll be right back after these messages. This episode is brought to you in part by New Holland Agriculture. New Holland is a proud Lancaster County company with a strong global presence. For over 125 years, they've been building, selling, and servicing machinery to help farmers feed a busy world. You can learn more about this world-class leader in farm equipment at newholland.com. This episode is brought to you in part by IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where their mission is to provide innovative agricultural products and services to connect American farmers with the pioneers and businesses that see hemp as a way to bring real and lasting change to our communities and planet. IND Hemp. All right, hello and welcome back to our show. Here we are. It's the very last week of October 2022. That in itself is mind-blowing. Time is flying by now. So I hope you didn't miss me too much. Last week, I took the whole week off. I didn't go anywhere. I just stayed home. It was like a staycation. I rode an e-bike through Valley Forge Park. I took some wonderful hikes in the woods here in southeastern Pennsylvania. I am generally feeling, pretty good and refreshed. I also celebrated a birthday, so now I am older and clearly wiser. Anyway, I just wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention before we get into our interview. The first is the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit. You heard about that in the intro. It's coming up November 14th and 15th. It's in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of great speakers and educational opportunities, as well as an expo. We will be hearing from Deputy Secretary Fred Strathmeyer about some of the things going on there. So you can learn more at pahempsummit.com. And remember, Pennsylvania hemp permit holders do get a discount on admission. So check that out. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is also happening on November 15th. So you're going to have to do some soul searching here to decide which event you want to attend. But anyway, this is the National Hemp Research Needs Workshop. It's hosted by the USDA and the Global Hemp Innovation Center at Oregon State University. It's a virtual event. It's a free event. All you have to do is register in advance by November 11th. Go to hempindustryresearchneeds.org to sign up and learn more. I'll have that link on the show page for this episode. But basically, leading industry members, scientists, extension educators, and other experts will present their ideas for what is needed to help establish a sustainable, competitive hemp industry. And all attendees will be active participants in giving their perspectives. The topics of discussion include genetics and plant breeding, sustainable ag production, harvest and materials processing, products manufacturing and supply chains, economics and markets, regulations, exports and trade, testing and compliance. So there's something here for everyone. It looks like a really good program that they put together. And if you want to learn even more about it, tune into next week's Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast, because my guest will be Dr. Heather Grab from Cornell University. She is one of the presenters at the workshop, and she gives some great detail as to what's happening there. So tune in next week. All right, so how about this week? Yeah, let's go talk to the guys from Hemp Processing Partners. Bill Brill and Shane Pritchard from Hemp Processing Partners. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, Eric. Thank you very much for having us.
Doing great, Eric. Thank you so much for letting us participate in this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to learn about what you're doing at Hemp Processing Partners. Let's first start by having each of you give me a short introduction.
My name is Shane Pritchard. I'm a mechanical engineer from Colorado. I've been in the hemp business since 2018, providing industrial solutions for this amazing plant, drawing on 20 plus years of industrial equipment experience.
All right. Thank you for that. And Bill?
Great, Eric. I'm Bill Brill. My background is distribution and sales for large retail, both domestic and international. And I was introduced to CBD in 2016, first to possibly bring that ingredient into large box, big box retail. And that started my journey in getting involved in the hemp industry, first on the floral side and then the fiber grain side.
Awesome. Cool. Well, welcome to both of you. Let's just dive in. What is Hemp Processing Partners? What do you do? How did you form the company? That sort of thing.
Well, Hemp Processing Partners was born of a company called United Precision Engineering. And where we sit today is in a position of strong knowledge of the hemp plant overall. We started off working on floral hemp for CBD. There were a lot of separation challenges out there, but not a lot of industrial solutions. So we brought our engineering team in and started working on a separation solution to get good, clean flower. We were separating out seed and stalk as a contaminant. And we knew very early on that seed and stalk would soon become a primary revenue driver, not a contaminant. And so as we developed systems to process 10,000 pounds an hour of floral hemp, we started doing research and development on decortication and managing those stalks. The seed for us didn't really require a lot of R&D. That's our background. We come from a seed processing world for the last several years. Yeah. So that's how we arrived at industrial hemp.
All right. And before that, had you ever, encountered industrial hemp or had even ever given it a thought?
I had worked with some Canadian seed producers probably 8 or 9 years ago. I was the chief engineer for a company called Oliver Manufacturing that does seed processing and food processing equipment. And they had seed that they needed to separate. And so they were sending seed down from Canada. We were doing basic seed cleaning and refinement processes and gravity separation on that. So that was my first foray into industrial hemp.
Okay.
What I figured out was that it tasted really good and that sooner or later the United States would be eating hemp seed. So that was my first taste.
All right. Yeah, let's hope so. So as an engineer, you're a problem solver and you just like having, a problem to sink your teeth into and figure out.
That's correct. And I see hemp as being a brand new clean slate. We've got a lot of people that are passionate about farming and genetics. We have a lot of people that are very focused on what you can do with the hemp plant and the thousands of uses we all hear about. But there's kind of a void in the equipment space there in the middle to get you from the great farming practices to the great use of hemp. And so we're here to fill that space and add some industrial knowledge there.
Okay. Bill, let's talk about your journey into hemp. You said you were in CBD back in 2016.
Right.
What sorts of issues were you dealing with that you thought you needed to bring in, like an engineering team to help you figure it out?
Well, first the backdrop. When I was introduced to CBD by a scientist in 2016, I was tasked with bringing new innovative products, typically nutraceuticals and topicals, to large big box retail like Sam's Club, Costco, Best Buy, domestically and around the world.
Okay.
And so the first goal was once I was introduced to CBD and its health benefits, I had visions of seeing pallet loads going to Costco because that's who I'd worked for and represented for many, many years. Mm-hmm. We still do not have that in 2022. And so I'm not done yet on that front. We still have conversations. But in 2017, 2018, we went from 42 acres to grow floral hemp to 356 acres. And when you back then, there wasn't as much knowledge as there is today in 2022. So we were learning on the job. And with that amount of biomass coming into harvest in late September, and with what the equipment that we had and the staff that we had, we knew we were going to have a processing challenge. And that's when we met United Precision Engineering. We met Shane. They were from the same region. We brought them down to the facility in Southeast Colorado, and they said, "Hey, let's see if we can provide some solutions," and they did. And then that was where the journey started. Was coming out of I got 350 acres to process, and I don't know how to do it, and please help us. And that's literally where that was born.
Turns out Bill wasn't the only guy in that spot too, as the CBD boom just exploded in Colorado. When we put some things out online that we had a separation solution, we were absolutely overwhelmed with business. And so we went from having a hemp system out there to having a hemp processing company as a subsidiary, to within 3 months we stopped taking outside engineering jobs and focus solely on hemp processing equipment.
Can you talk about that early floral processing machine? You describe it a little bit for us?
So we developed an air handling system so that we could keep all of the trichomes in suspension and keep from losing trichomes as we were separating and processing. So we started with a rotary screener to do a rough size separation. Then we used aspiration to separate the light flower and trichomes from the seed and small sticks. We then run that through a cyclone and an airlock to drop that out. And in the system that Bill's referring to, that first one, we then use pneumatic conveying to carry it from that to the next processing step. So we were able to increase their efficiency probably 20-fold. We took a completely hand operation and took it to the stage that all they had to do was monitor the system. They just had to drop hemp in the conveyor going in, and then monitor that nothing was plugging or sticking. Hemp's a sticky, rough material to handle. And so we did have to work through some issues and change some flows and things like that to keep that sticky material flowing. But we were able to take their efficiency to the point they were looking for, and then really drastically beyond that. Not only did we drastically reduce their labor inputs, we increased their quality immensely. We eliminated a lot of fats and waxes out of their extraction process and gave them seed dropping out of the aspirator as a sellable product. So we took what had been a contaminant that was harming their extraction process, gave them another revenue stream, decreased their labor, and it just blew the people's minds that had been doing it by hand for so long. It was just revolutionary to them. And so we got excited, went to the NOCO Hemp Expo. We had gone as observers a couple of times, but then we actually set up a booth, had some video, had some small demo equipment there, and immediately had just tremendous reception from people who really needed those efficiencies, because they knew the space was exploding so fast. They couldn't do things by hand very long and keep up.
Right. So, Bill, you were at a different company back then.
Correct.
But were you also then involved in the formation of Hemp Processing Partners?
I wasn't involved in the formation of HPP. I was with another company, and that's where we met. I left Colorado and went to Arizona in 2019 when hemp was legalized in Arizona, and we opened up a small farm in joint venture. And our aim was to grow feminized seed production in the southeast area so that we could prove longitude, latitude, and we could harden it off for that region, for Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. It was our belief that genetics need to be regionalized.
Yeah.
And so that's where our relationship continued. Obviously, I knew of HPP's success before, so we hired them. We actually bought equipment from them, and they got us through harvesting of our crop in 2019. Okay. Then in 2020, I left Arizona, and HPP was shifting into industrial fiber and grain, and that's really where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in large scale solutions to this this climate problem, this climate challenge, and economic opportunities. And so I came on as VP of Business Development for HPP.
Okay, well, let's talk about that shift from floral to industrial fiber and grain. What made you guys want to go in that direction at HPP?
So for us, it was based on seeing a product coming out of our system that had no value at the time. We were pulling out sticks and stems, and there was no market for those, no use for those. And so initially we thought there's a large volume of these, several hundred tons of this being produced every year. There's an opportunity there. But then once we started investigating and actually learning what hemp could be used for, it was easy to see that people were going to start growing for that as a primary product very soon. There was just too much good use of that plant for that not to naturally come on. So we started doing research into decortication. We're dealers for some manufacturers. We also just do contract engineering for other people. So for us, it was about finding the best piece of equipment. We didn't want to become a manufacturer and create our own. So we wanted to do like we've done with other things in the past and pull in the best of what was available in the US and Europe and create some systems. And so we started going to manufacturers and doing testing and taking hemp to them. And we've developed a lot of good relationships. We now have a very solid handle on what can be done with today's current technology. We've become very aware of the differences in decortication technology and the pluses and minuses. And so at this point, I think that the industry is ready to take that next step. As soon as people really invest in hemp refining facilities, it's going to explode very quickly. Right now, that's the bottleneck. You have a lot of farmers that want to grow, but they really know there aren't a lot of processing centers to take it to.
Right.
You have a few processing centers out there that probably can't even keep up with the small amount of hemp that's being grown right now. And so I think that's where the industry sits. We're poised to take another big leap. And HPP is continuing to do research and development, continuing to pilot small systems and programs so that we can help facilitate that.
Oh, Bill, I met you this summer out in Montana at I&D Hemp's Summer Summit. And they've got a great facility there,
Awesome.
But the only problem is that it's one of very few in the country. So I'm wondering if you can share sort of your vision, for scale, like, what's the scale we need to get to for hemp processing in the country?
Yeah. Yeah. A big eye opener for us. And you're right. I mean, the team over at I&D Hemp, great leaders, great facility. But you're right. If we're really going to tap into some real problem solving and solutions, we need more. We need many more facilities like I&D Hemp. And an exercise that we did about a year ago is the X Prize carbon sequestration that was done by US Foundation. And so we entered that contest, and the thesis is to sequester a gigaton of carbon, sequester it for 100 years. And we set about providing a submission for that. And in our research and our work, which was quickly done, and I'm going to say quickly done, 45 days. And I say that in this perspective. There are private sector and university studies and submissions that have been going on for years, 5 to 10 years. They've been working on prototypes and desktop applications, and they submitted with all that background and knowledge. We did ours in 45 days, but we really went at it hard. It was a hard rigor for us. And what we came up with is that we wanted to provide a scaled solution for 112 million acres of industrial hemp grown on planet Earth. That's the number. 112 million acres would sequester a gigaton of carbon. Okay, not counting all of the offtakes, not counting all of the air, but just trapping the carbon in that hemp, 112 million acres. And we proved that out with our submission. We made it some cuts. Not one hemp submission made it to the final cut, and we finally got cut too. But it was in that rigor that born a real scaled vision for us. That's why I talk about Morocco. 100,000 hectares, 250,000 acres. There's no reason why we shouldn't have millions of acres, just like corn, soy, alfalfa in our country and around the world being grown. And if we do that, we're going to need engineering companies to come in with scaled facilities, just like when you had the ethanol boom. There were many ethanol facilities that were built to support that industry. We need hemp refineries to support the industrial hemp industry.
You mentioned Morocco. Can you dig in a little bit more on that? What's the story on Morocco?
Well, that goes back a little bit, Eric, to my background prior to him. I've been involved with a company for decades that was global in space. So I was used to doing business around the world. This past year, I traveled to Egypt to meet with some farming community subject leaders, and they were so enthusiastic about hemp and about what it could do for carbon sequestration, for environmental social governance, for the climate control that's coming up. You've got climate meetings coming up with COP27 here next month in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt. And so it was out of those travels in Egypt this year that we, along the way, met some people in other regions, in MENA and Morocco, et cetera. Well, Morocco has a huge interest. Obviously, they have a background in the plant growing hashish, but they have a huge interest in leaning, and they're putting their money and their interest in their farming ground where their interest is. And it's my understanding that they're already planning on growing next year, literally hundreds of thousands of hectares, starting with 100,000 hectares. That's just the beginning.
Of
That's just
industrial
one
hemp,
of
not
industrial hemp, of
okay.
industrial hemp. I mean, you wouldn't need to grow 100,000 hectares of floral hemp at this moment.
No.
There's not a market. There's not distribution capability. There's not enough consumers or bandwidth or channels for that. But channels for hempcrete, for hemp hurd, for hemp seed, for bast fiber. Yes, there's channels for that, and they're savvy. And so that's one country that's leaning into it very aggressively. But there's others around the world.
Right. So you mentioned 112 million acres would sequester a gigaton of carbon.
Right.
Is that what you said? And so, and that would be in a year. If we could grow 112 million acres in a year, that would be a lot of carbon sunk in just that year. And then we'd have a chance to do it again the next year, right? And then the next year.
Oh, crop grows from anywhere from a 70-day cycle to a 110-day cycle. So depending on longitude and latitude, you could grow, 2 crops a year. We in Arizona, we grew 3 crops in 1 year in 2019 in Yuma, Arizona. So there's the opportunity for multi-crops per year to put out that kind of production.
Right. So to me, this seems pretty simple, pretty straightforward. What's the disconnect? Like, why don't sort of other people or industries or government, why don't they see this as like a way forward here? Like, why is there, like, it seems like there's still a lot of resistance, or like they don't take the hemp industry seriously. But looking just at those numbers, it looks like, yeah, this is a very good solution.
The problem is the stigma of cannabinoids. So you have two sides of that. One, you have people that are anti-marijuana, and they have trouble separating. They hear the word hemp, they've heard it forever, and they just immediately associate with they think it's just a sanitary word for marijuana. It's not true, but that's what they think. The other is CBD. So you have so many investors that lost tens of millions of dollars on the CBD craze that the financial world all knows somebody. They've all got a brother-in-law that lost $1 million in CBD. And you have so much trouble separating industrial hemp as a building material and things like that from industrial hemp as a medicinal product. And so we really need a lot more education. And I think that it truly is just a coincidence that you can make hempcrete and CBD oil out of the same plant. It's a coincidence. The two are not related in their uses. So we need somehow to educate the financial world about that and let them know that just because your brother-in-law lost $1 million on a CBD extraction facility doesn't mean you're going to have the same fate when you do hempcrete or animal bedding or whatever.
Right. There's a lot of talk about ESG as that stands for what? Environmental
social governance.
There you go. And it seems like, the hemp solution would fit into all of those ESG goals, right?
It does, but I think we have lobbying wins that are somewhat against us, as we've seen with both the X Prize and with the USDA grants that were awarded. there's money being awarded to a lot of people that aren't really doing things anywhere nearly as impactful as industrial hemp. And I think when you start throwing around huge amounts of money, you get the interest of people that aren't on our side.
Right. Right. Um, there's can we talk about like the low hanging fruit? Like I know they say hemp can do, 25,000 different things, but it seems a little like we spread too thin if we go for all of those at once. What
So
areas of this should we be focusing on?
Shane, let me just jump in. Eric, I want to put into context something we discussed earlier, and that is 112 million acres grown a year to sequester a gigaton of carbon. Should be known that that represents less than 2% of the farmable acres on planet Earth without doing remediation of barren lands that currently are not even being counted. So there is a lot of depleted soils. There's desert land that could be reclamated. So there, but right now, 112 million acres is less than 2% of the farmable acres on planet Earth. So that's why also that number is really an important number to lean into. As far as the low hanging fruit, you know, this crop, the stalk and the stem, depending on the variety, produces a lot of what we call hurd, and that's the pithy middle of the stalk. And that hurd is easily dried, cured, chopped to a specific size, depending on the end consumer, for hempcrete. Hempcrete is basically taking that hurd, mixing it with a lime binder, and making non-structural form-filling walls for residential, say, call it for residential homes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, I mean, the ICC, the International Code Council, just approved hempcrete for residential building. The International Residential Codes has approved it and will be published here next year, 2023, ready for building in 2024. The largest architectural firms in the world are now having ESG, to your point, ESG as a number one lean mandate when they're checking the box of a project they're going to take on. They want it to be environmentally social governance approved. They want ready renewable materials. They want carbon sequestration. They want logistic sensitivity. So I'm not doing trucking and railing, which is burning fossil fuels in the air. And they have internal and external mandates of being net zero, in some cases by 2030. So if you have architectural companies, they're doing the blueprints of the world, and you have the ICC and the IRC who have approved hempcrete, and they can easily be grown, baled, and processed in large scale. That seems like a real good solution to start weaning out concrete, which is much more difficult on our environment.
Right.
That's just
Right.
one low hanging.
Yeah. It just seems like everything is sort of poised to, I don't know, sort of fire at some point, right? Like we're a little early, but it's like leading up to something, a paradigm shift, hopefully.
Well, you kind of mentioned it. You said the word fire, right? We've been having this conversation for a few weeks. We are getting contracted domestically and around the world to build large scaled commissions. And we're getting more and more inquiries, and we don't do any advertising. And I'm a marketing guy. We do zero advertising. Word of mouth. We have a simple website. We have a small LinkedIn page. Yet people around the world, entities around the world, governments around the world, both domestically and internationally, are inquiring about large scale solutions. And so lately it's been there's so much smoke, we know fire's coming.
All right.
Well, Eric, I also believe that there's a critical mass that we have to hit to be taken seriously as an ingredient for large scale manufacturing. So, if you want to make Levi's out of hemp fiber, or you want to use hemp as a bioplastic ingredient, you need to know that the supply chain is more of a supply web, right? You need to know there's diversity there. If somebody's plant burns down, if somebody has a failed crop, whatever, your business is not at risk. And you need to know that when you order it, you're not ordering it by the pound, you're ordering it by the ton or the train car load, right? We had a plastics guy who said, this has been back in 2020 when we were first starting to realize how big the industrial market was. We said, and he's a Colorado guy, and we said, hey, would you be interested in doing a hemp bioplastic line? He said, yeah, I've thought about it. And he said, if you could get me probably 10 tons he said, if you give me 10 tons a week, he said, I'd be pretty interested. He said, if you could guarantee me 20 tons a day, I'll sign up now. But he said that's how much plastic flows through here. So
Right.
we can't dribble it in. You need to either go or not go. And when we were at I&D at the summit, we heard Guy Carpenter talking about the quantities that are required on the fiber side. And so we know the demand's there, but really there is the hobby side, right? There's build a tiny little hempcrete structure and I can get enough material together to do that. And there's, hey, I want to build subdivisions out of this stuff. And we're not at that large scale yet.
No.
And once we take that leap, once we move from what is almost a hobby into full blown diverse supply chain that big companies will take a look at, I think it will explode almost overnight.
Yeah.
We'll have to hit that critical mass.
Right. So you mentioned Guy Carpenter. Just wanted to point out he's from Bear Fiber, right? I think they're based in the Carolinas, North Carolina.
Yes. Yep.
And
he has so much knowledge and so many connections that if the supply's there, he's going to move a lot of hemp into the textile world.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so there's no question that our farmers can grow this crop. You know, farmers all over the world can grow this crop. Here in the U.S., we can grow it exceptionally well. We've got great soils, etc. We know that the market potential is huge, but like you've pointed out again and again, it's that bottleneck at the processing. And we not just need a few processors, we need lots of processors, and we need them localized, right?
And that means, Eric, that the first, 10 or 20 plus facilities aren't competitors. We're helping each other. Having somebody else doing it is not a threat to your job or your supplies. It's actually a boost. So I've been pounding the table, telling people, stop worrying about sharing information, stop worrying about competing, stop worrying that one other person's doing it. Let's encourage enough people to do it that we get taken seriously and we all become a real industry.
Right. Yeah, when we get to the point when there's real competition, that's a good thing, right? But at this point, it's too early.
Years down the road.
Yep. And the folks at I&D Hemp, keep bringing them up, but they're pushing this cooperation. They realize the same thing.
They understand that they have people coming in wanting to buy hemp from them, and they know that those people wanting to buy hemp are going to require bigger quantities than they can supply. They've talked about a trade alliance. They really get it because they're out there doing it. So many people in hemp are talking and we're theorizing and we're having great conversations. I&D Hemp is actually doing. They are transacting. Yeah. Transacting is something that doesn't happen a lot in our world yet, in the world of industrial hemp. And I just applaud them for actually putting what they know out there for people to share and learn. And they do get that we need a lot more people doing it.
Yeah. Can you talk about some of the projects you're working on, like around the world or in the U.S., and sort of where that's going?
So Bill and I are both working on some different stuff along with the rest of our team. One of the things that I've been working on for about 18 months is a project in Australia. We have a team there that their business plan is to replace wood chips in the thoroughbred racing industry. They have a short supply due to bushfires down there, a large demand. And once they started to show racehorse trainers how well hemp works as a bedding material, the demand just exploded. And so they are putting together a business to supply that industry. Here in the U.S., we have, I don't know, I haven't totaled them up. I would say probably 7 or 8 entities that are in the fundraising stage. They put together business plans, and now they've got to convince the investing world that industrial hemp really is here to stay, and there are good offtakes for that. So we're working with several people there. We're doing some research and development for a couple of decorticating companies to help them build the system around the decorticator. And then I'll let Bill talk about it. He's been our international guy here for the last several months. When he came on board, I was excited because I wasn't going to have to be engineer and sales guy all at the same time for these people, even though they want technical information. There's so much correspondence that goes on. I said, hey, Bill, you want to take these international leads that are come on? I said, send them over. So now Bill's our international guy. So let him tell you what he's got going on.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, Eric, I think that was an eye-opener for me most of this year in taking these inquiries from around the world. And I think what we've learned is, as you know, Europe is is ahead of us from the United States as far as industrial fiber hemp. I'm talking about hurd. I'm talking about hempcrete. I'm talking about grain. Their genetics, much like Canada is ahead of us because they were able to grow industrial hemp back to 98. So what I'm learning from these international opportunities is two things. One, they're aware of the desktop applications that are regional to them, and that they felt that the desktop applications, the smaller scale, 500 to 1,000 pounds an hour processing, was not going to be a solution for where they wanted to go. So they started searching real scaled solutions, and that's where we started checking some boxes. So those projects range from private sector to government sector, from anywhere from 6 tons to 10 tons to 20 tons per hour. We're talking about, in many cases, food security, so grain separating applications, certainly textiles, but also repositioning. For example, there's one country, and I'm under an NDA, I can't really speak about it, but there's one country that's repositioning their tobacco industry for the floral and the industrial grain growing applications, literally repurposing these farmers that have been growing tobaccos for decades and shifting over to industrial hemp. And therefore, they're going to need flower separation, seed separation, stalk and stem separation. And so we're talking about building multiple facilities on their campus.
Oh, wow.
So very large applications, both government and private sector, and they're all searching for scaled solutions, not desktop.
Yeah. Do you also work with like genetics companies? Like, I mean, not even sure how to ask this, but like when you go in and you're trying to set up, a processing facility, do you then work with the client on finding the right genetics for that region? Can you talk some about that?
Certainly, we've been asked to do that, and prior to my assignment here with HPP, I did have a genetics company in Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
so I do know a thing or two about genetics. I understand the importance of the right genetic in the right longitude and latitude, having a good agronomist or breeder to really select the right genetic, plant pattern, farming practices, etc., having spent enough time. And the reality is, these emerging countries and emerging entities, both domestic and international, just have not delved into having the expertise on their team yet
Right.
for some of those genetic solutions. So yes, we provide suggestions, recommendations, sources, on that accord, because
Okay.
we know on the engineering side that the genetics, right, is going to play a part on our efficiency on how we decorticate and process.
Right. Right. Um, do you also advise people on like farming practices? Because I know like the carbon sequestration here is a huge potential, but if you're using like like the old practices of lots of plowing and whatnot, you lose a lot of that carbon almost immediately once you plow. So regenerative farming practices have to be part of the equation here.
Right.
Do you advise on that?
We don't bill ourselves as farmers, but we have worked with so many people in this journey that we've accumulated quite a bit of knowledge. We've participated in a lot of trials, and we've got a pretty good handle on how to do it economically and easily in a way that doesn't cause a farmer to have to relearn everything he knows about farming. So yeah, we do that. We share that. It's not something we charge for, but it is knowledge we share quite a bit
Okay.
because we've actually seen it. We've seen it done in a way that is just not really that hard. Um, if you've got a farmer who understands hay production, then they generally fit into industrial hemp production very easily and even use most of the same equipment. So we try and share that anytime we can to kind of break down some of the stigma about hemp being hard to do. There again, going back to the CBD days, CBD hemp's hard to farm. It's not for the
It's,
faint of heart
yeah.
and expensive. And so those are the stories farmers have heard, and we want to let them know it's not the same. It is easier to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eric, if I can just add to what Shane just said, um, the analogy that I often use about the difference between floral cannabinoid hemp growing versus true grain and industrial fiber hemp is the difference between growing a strawberry and having to harvest that strawberry, wash it, get it to market, versus growing hay, like Shane says. That literally is the difference between floral hemp and industrial fiber grain hemp in
Right.
its application, right?
Yeah.
Strawberry is very delicate flower, and the colas and the CBD rich terpenes, resins, it's like a strawberry. But what we saw in Montana, right? You saw that crop in Montana. That's being grown and looks like the biggest thicket of hay you've ever seen.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's fascinating. Getting back to like sort of the hempcrete side of things, and like you look around the country, and there's how many, millions of houses, right? And they were built in the past, and they're probably leaky and inefficient. And it's not much of a stretch of the imagination to think that you could, you know, just redo all of these houses with green building materials, right? There's a really interesting project in Western Pennsylvania called the Project PA Hemp Home, where they did just that. They took a residential home, they stripped it all out, and then they built hempcrete walls and put hemp wood flooring down in there, sort of as a proof of concept. And I mean, just from that point of view, you could see, the hempcrete just taking off.
Well, we know that hempcrete is going to get more and more. It's going to be approved in more and more uses, but right now, what you're talking about is an infill materials or wall insulation material. It's right in, and I live in a house that before we bought it was completely gutted to the studs and remodeled, and it could have easily gone back with hempcrete in the walls or the hemp bat insulation that Hemp Protector is doing. So either one of those materials would have been a good fit for this house redo when it was done. I think that as an engineer, I want to use all the properties of it. So I want to be able to, because I'm a registered professional engineer here in Colorado, so I've signed off on building projects for many, many years. And you want to be able to use maybe some of the compressive strength, and you want to be able to reduce the amount of structural lumber in the building by as much as you can if you really want to maximize the benefit of the hempcrete. Those are tests that are going to come on. Those will be subsequent tests that are done that get adopted into the building code. So probably 10 years from now, we may see the lumber usage in a building cut in half by being able to take into account some of the compressive strength. And we're also going to see more people invest in advancing the standardization of hempcrete, right? So that when you say it has X amount of strength, it's verified by a certain mixture done a certain way at a certain moisture level and those kind of things. So as an engineer, I'm excited to see people playing with that and starting to hone in on standardization so that we can really maximize it.
We talked a little bit ago about the sort of double stigma around hemp, the marijuana stigma and the CBD stigma. Bill, with your background in marketing, I would love to hear your thoughts about, like how do you change that narrative? How do you reach the general public? How do you change hearts and minds? How do you connect with them, on the goodness of hemp? Do you have any advice for the industry and how they should go about that?
You have to stay steady and consistent and a repetitive message. Going back to marketing, one, this stigma has been made for what? Goes
80
back to what,
years?
the 30s?
Yeah.
Yeah, 90 years. So you're talking about multi-generational to unwind. And the new generation, that message hasn't been hardwired and passed down. It is actually more open. But I just think it's a more consistent, continual education. For example, strawberry versus hay. If I say this plant is a strawberry and this plant is a hay, whether you've ever been a farmer or not, just the visual impressions of that gives you a very simplistic division of two different plants. Well, they're both lumped under hemp, and yet one could be sticky and delicate like a strawberry, and one could be easy to use and process like hay. The second thing is that us getting industrial hemp approved, right, without testing for THC. There's no reason why certain genetics that we have with fiber and grain need to be tested for THC. Unburden that farmer. And I know there's legislation, there's great groups. IND is also on the spearhead of that. That's going towards Congress next year to get that approved. I'm hopeful that there will be some common sense viewing of that legislature and get that done.
Right. You're talking about the exemption, the hemp exemption.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. So almost like you said, unfortunately, CBD set back fiber grain industrial hemp. Unfortunately, they lumped it in, and everybody got a narrative, everybody got conditioned, and and so when you hear hemp, you now think of CBD. And what we should be hearing is grain. I always bring up Manitoba's harvest. I said, you shop at Costco. Simple analogy. You shop at Costco. Yes. Have you ever seen hemp hearts or hemp seed from Manitoba Harvest or private now, Kirkland brand from Costco? Have you ever seen that? Yeah, I have. That's been grown in Canada for over 2 decades. Does that look like CBD? Are you concerned about that? Are you feeding that to your family? So it's that constant narrative and conversation to separate the two, that's going to have to continue to happen.
Right. Are there other sort of legislative solutions that would help either your business or the industry in general?
Mhm. Well, let me jump in there. It's something a drum that I've been beating pretty much this entire year because of uh, the conversations and the interest around the world. I firmly believe that the international governments are moving faster than the United States government. And eventually, when you get approvals from European countries, the Middle East, Africa, South America, and they start using hempcrete the way they're going to use it, they start using bast fiber the way we can use it. That's going to put pressure on our local legislators because at the end of the day, they're voted in by the public, and the public has access to world information. And when they start seeing the rest of the world passing us by and growing the sustainable, beneficial crop, I think the legislators are going to be pressured into making decisions quicker than they might otherwise do. That's my opinion.
I think the legislature could help a lot if they did some tax incentives for things like green building materials, like they do solar panels. We here in Colorado deal with wildfires. California deals with a lot of wildfires. We know that hempcrete is fireproof. That's been well documented, talked about at length. We had a fire here in Colorado last year that destroyed over 1,000 homes in one fire outside of Denver. It was absolutely mind-boggling. So there was a lot of talk here on the Denver news about changing the building codes as a result of this fire. And what all of us thought was they were going to recommend things like metal roofing and things that would reduce the spread of fire. The codes they changed were insulation. They wanted to increase the R value of the homes that went back so that they're more energy efficient. They didn't mention hempcrete. They didn't mention green building materials. They didn't mention fire spread mitigation. And so it was some very uneducated politicians who just took a chance to throw something green on the news. Hey, we're going to increase insulation. These homes are going to be more efficient. We're going to save the planet. They did nothing to save future homes or the planet the way they proposed that. And they just made it more expensive to rebuild those homes. And in fact, many of those homes aren't getting rebuilt. So we have a misguided attempt to positively impact the planet. And we need legislators to actually do something that incentivizes people to do what we all know will help.
And how do we get them to incentivize?
Well, we probably as an industry are going to have to spend money on lobbying dollars. As much as we hate that messy, nasty part of politics, lobbying, we probably are going to have to spend some dollars to do that as an industry. We probably need industry trade groups that are more cohesive. I think right now there are probably 7 or 8 groups, international and domestic associations, and we probably need to bring those associations together so that those pieces of influence and dollars can be focused and get politicians to understand what needs to be done, because this isn't even a partisan issue. This is not Republican or Democrat. This is common sense things that make good economic sense and good climate sense. So
Yeah.
it's not that hard.
I mean, I look at hemp as like the perfect, nonpartisan or bipartisan issue because there's something here
Yeah,
for everybody. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, and Eric, and my background always leads me to is follow the money, right? So how many Home Depots? No disrespect to Lowe's, I think they're a great chain, great brand. But I have experience with Home Depot. There's 2,300 Home Depots in the system. How much lumber? How much concrete being sold, purchased on a daily basis out of 2,300 Home Depots? And again, this goes back to education. Now, what if we could start to replace that concrete with hempcrete? What if we could start replace some of those particle boards from different shavings into hemp particle boards. What if? I mean, think about the distribution responsibility that a company like Home Depot provide. Now think about this. Does the lumber industry want to change? Does the concrete industry want to change? No, they don't want to change. But also, the tobacco industry didn't want to change, but they saw a declining market and they diversified into marijuana. I believe that if we can build the industry, the lumber industry, the concrete industry will diversify because it just makes good business sense. But right now, they don't need to diversify because we're nascent. That's why United Precision Engineering was created. We're a scaled solution so we can bring the commodity price down so that we can compete with concrete, we can compete with other flooring materials and building materials, so that we can so that they can now participate in the industry and diversify like business people that they are. Same way that the tobacco industry diversified into marijuana, we don't see any reason why the building industries, the oil and biofuels industries, the bioplastic industry, or the petroleum plastic into the bioplastic, they'll integrate once there's supply chain security and they see that the consumer is asking for it, right? 20 years ago, gourmet little stores like Whole Foods didn't exist until consumers demanded it. And then Amazon bought Whole Foods. Ask yourself the question why. He didn't do it because he had an extra, $30 billion. He did it because he's smart. Because consumers were providing that demand, right? But we need scale so the consumers are educated, they can afford it, the demand will be there, and then private sector will follow that. Diversification will not be a problem for them once we have scale.
So hemp is not a threat, it's an opportunity.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. Look, Home Depot wants to sell things that consumers want to buy. And right now, Home Depot is not going to take my call as a buyer, as a seller, right? Because of what Shane said earlier, because we can't guarantee them supply chain week over week, right, whether to one club, 500 clubs, let alone 2,300.
Yeah, we got some challenges ahead of us, but lots of opportunity.
Well, us, as you know, us in the industry, we're not leaving. We know that there's a lot of smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
And so we just stay steady at our tasks and continue to take on calls, collaboration, and keep moving forward.
Good. Yeah, I say us, and I mean you all, because I'm a journalist covering this. But
but you're doing a great job. You're doing a tremendous job, and we couldn't get the word out without people like you and entities like you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So where can people go to learn more about what you do and sort of, maybe sign up for your services, or, you have a website? Sure. I guess that's what I'm asking for.
We do have a website, hempprocessingpartners.com, and we have a LinkedIn page. Bill is pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm an engineer, so maybe I'm not social enough, and so I do a poor job communicating on LinkedIn. My profile probably hasn't been updated in a really long time. But if you want to communicate with us, that's probably a great way to get the dialogue started.
Okay.
Reach out to Bill on LinkedIn, and we love to help educate people and figure out how we can get that critical mass we're all talking about.
Great. I'll put links to your social pages and website on the show page for this episode.
We appreciate that, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. What else should I ask you? What else do you think people need to know?
I think people need to know that we're beyond the experimenting stage as an industry as a whole, but as United Precision Engineering and Processing Partners, it's time for the rubber to hit the road and start to produce products at a commercial scale. And I think there are a lot of people ready for that. And I think our industry is ready to kick off. We just need, I think the industry as a whole needs some real investment dollars dropped in to create some multi-million-dollar hemp refineries that get us to commercial scale.
Amen to that. All right. Well, Shane Pritchard and Bill Brill from Hemp Processing Partners, thank you so much for your time today. It's great to talk to you and to learn about what you're doing.
Great to be with you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate it.
All right. There you go. Hemp Processing Partners. I'll have all those links that they mentioned on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. All right, so under normal circumstances, that would be the end of the show. You know, I'd play the music, bum, bum, ba-da, and then we do the credits and all that stuff. But no, not today. We've got something else in store for you. We're going to talk to Fred Strathmeyer. He's the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture at the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, and he's going to tell us what we can expect to find at the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit, which, as you know, is coming up November 14th and 15th in Harrisburg. So here we go. Let's talk to Fred. Fred Strathmeyer, Deputy Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Pennsylvania. Welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
Doing fine, Eric. Thank you for asking. Interesting days, certainly, and more interesting days in front of us here in the next couple of weeks. New administration, new goals, new missions, so new vision.
Yeah, good. Well, a lot to look forward to, including the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit that's coming up. What's that? The 14th and 15th of November. So just about 3 weeks away. Correct.
To the day.
Yeah.
So, we're really looking forward to it, Eric. And thanks for asking. One of the things I think that I'd like to be able to tell you is that, where in the past, the industry was young and still trying to learn, and they still are. But at this point, this summit is going to be more geared towards where we've been, where we are today, and where we want to be tomorrow. And with that will come conversations around the infrastructure needed, the investment needed, the additional research that we need going forward.
Great. And who's coming to the summit to talk about these things?
So we've got a really diverse group in my mind. As we're bringing in a gentleman that you know fairly well. You've interviewed him. Ken Elliott is coming in from Montana. Mm-hmm. He speaks. His company is about sustainability and environmentally stabilizing practices and all those good things that hemp does for us and the ecology of hemp. We've also have a session that we'll have with legislators, and we're going to break that into a fiber and grain session, and then a cannabinoid session.
Okay.
And we've brought people in to discuss that.
You mentioned that there's legislators coming in. Are these state level legislators? Are these?
Yeah. Yes, we've invited a group of legislators from here obviously here in Pennsylvania. There will be, right now we have 6 committed, and even though that doesn't sound like a big number, there will be staff from those that were unable to make it. We have staff showing as well. So we're really it's really a positive thing that the legislator's going to get a chance to hear and ask questions about this industry that probably is long overdue.
Right. So from your perspective in the Department of Agriculture, what are some of the things about the industry that you think legislators need to be educated on?
Well, I think that one of the things for sure is the difference between the grain, the fiber, and the cannabinoids. Absolutely. Unfortunately, I think, Eric, you've been around this industry for a long time too. Unfortunately, that when people from outside the industry talk about hemp, the first thing that comes to their mind is cannabinoids and CBDs. We are certainly at a stage in our evolution here in the state of Pennsylvania where we need to grasp the value and what the hemp fiber and grain and construction possibilities and all those things that are more the industrial side of this conversation, as opposed to the cannabinoids. Again, a very important and vital part of the industry, but one that seems to have taken center stage for a while now.
Right. Yeah, we've got a lot of neat projects happening in Pennsylvania that we need to shine more light on. What comes to mind is Coexist Build. They have their it's like a tiny hemp home kit that they call the Traveler. That's really fascinating. There's the Project PA Hemp Home where they refurbished a residential house with hempcrete.
Dawn Services.
Yeah, Dawn Services. And, the work that Cameron McIntosh with the Marachon Cast Hemp is doing, with the spray applied hempcrete. A lot of neat stuff. And then with Chickies Creek with the hemp fed eggs, from Kreider's last year. Like, there's a lot of neat stuff happening here.
To add to that, DCED just awarded a company up in the Sunbury area some grant money to work on plastics.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
so we're getting there. But again, this will be, I think, a real eye opener for those legislators that are able to attend.
Right. And the thing about Pennsylvania, I mean, this is sort of obvious when you think about the Keystone State. We are we're centrally located here next to so many markets. So I think Pennsylvania deserves to be, one of the major players in the new hemp industry. And so hopefully with doing things like the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit, we are on our way towards that.
Yeah.
So what else? Are there other things that you are looking forward to for the summit?
Yeah, actually, there's going to be 3 sessions on sharing success stories. We've brought in Mark Sutherland from Hemp Black, and then we're bringing in a gentleman from out in Nevada, Justin DeAngelis from Rhino Biosciences.
Okay.
And Allison Justice is from Hemp Mine. She's from down in South Carolina.
Okay.
Both very successful over the last 5 to 10 years, quite frankly, and looking to share their stories.
Good.
And then we have also Chad Rosen from Victory Hemp to also be speaking to us as well.
Right. Yeah, I saw him give a presentation this summer out in Montana, and yeah, just the food angle to hemp is just so fascinating and has so much potential. So that's great that you've got Chad Rosen. There was some talk of like a scholarship program to help maybe socially disadvantaged farmers attend the session.
Yeah.
Can you give us some info on that?
Yeah, a little bit anyway. Yeah, PASA has actually the ones that have stepped up and are offering these scholarships to, I think, approximately 25 different farmers. And the idea there is that there'll be some criteria that they need to meet. But at the end of the day, it's to try to, as you say, have people that normally may not be able to afford to be part of the summit to actually be able to be here, to learn, to engage, and to meet those people that are already in the industry.
Good. Okay. I see there's a workshop about grant funding opportunities and strategies. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so we've got Krista Schneider from PennTap, which is a part of Penn State. She's going to do a little bit on the grant funding, the opportunities, and the strategies. So the idea there is that she has written, she's a grant writer, and so she can give some insight into that can be a daunting task for grant writing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hoping that's she's going to be able to give some insight to people that will help them, enhance them to be able to write for grants. And as you're aware, we put out RFPs and on different research projects, and we'll be doing that at the end of the month. We also currently have so about $200,000 we put out for another grant opportunity that's for education, promotion, and marketing is also available right now.
Yeah, I saw that. That's for nonprofits, though, right?
Nonprofits, yeah.
Okay.
But again, an organization can work with a nonprofit. So a farmer could work with a nonprofit. The nonprofit would have to be the one that would submit for the grant.
Okay.
But a farmer could work with a nonprofit to be able to take advantage of this type of grant.
Okay. How about a podcaster working for a for-profit newspaper?
You know what? I'm going to have to get back to you on that one.
Right. Cool. And then there's also going to be like the expo component. You're going to have different businesses set up in the expo hall.
Yeah, similar to what we've done in the past, and there will be certain vendors there that will be able to show their wares and be able to again get that one-on-one that we all need in business.
Right.
And another piece that I'll segue into as well is
sure.
For the first time is we're going to showcase different research projects this time, Eric. There's been 13 identified currently, And what the idea is that different researchers from around the state are going to bring posters and work off those posters and be able to talk to people one on one. And I'm actually really anxious to see that there's quite a diverse group of knowledge that's going to be out there for us all to learn from
Oh, good. Okay.
through this particular showcase.
Good. I love posters, right? Who doesn't love posters?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the venue is different this year. You've moved it to Harrisburg when in the past it had been in Lancaster.
Yeah, we've moved it to the farm show. It will, I think, for many, going to Lancaster was great, but one of the things that we heard that was somewhat of a challenge was parking.
Mm.
So, as you and I both know, parking is not a challenge at
Lots
the
of
farm
parking
show,
now.
and so we're hoping to be able to take advantage of that as well as a facility that's near and dear to the department. That's for sure.
Yeah, maybe for folks who either aren't from Pennsylvania or aren't familiar with that farm show complex, can you just sort of describe it for us?
Well, I think it's about 24 or 25 acres under roof. We will be up in the PA preferred banquet area,
Mm-hmm.
which is on the second floor of the facility, and be able to take advantage of quite a bit of room that's going to be adjoined to each other. So for some of the breakout sessions, we'll all be fairly close
Oh,
for
good.
that. So it'll
Okay.
be, I think, a lot easier for people just to get around as well.
Oh, good. Okay. Um, but there's no scheduled rodeo or anything, right?
No, no, not this time.
All right. Maybe work on that for next year. I don't know.
Yeah, well, if you want to bring your horses, it's fine.
All right. Well, what else should folks know about the Hemp Summit coming up in a few weeks?
Well, I think that more than anything, I think it's going to be, as I said in the beginning, this is about trying to think about before you even come. What are the challenges that you have as a grower, a processor today? Where do you see, potential for investment? How do we go about that, getting those investors involved? Um, and then as we spoke about the legislators, is there legislation that Pennsylvania should be looking at, Eric, going forward? As you know, and I know, the federal government has their final rule. We were all working off of that. But going into this, are there certain challenges that are not being met? And I think about testing and the 1% versus it's a 0.3% today. Should it be 1%? Those are some discussions I think that are going to be critical going forward.
Mm-hmm.
We have a farm bill coming up in 2023. So I do know that, and I would put a plug in, and I haven't so far. So I apologize for the steering committee, of which from 8 to 9 o'clock, actually on Tuesday morning, they're opening their doors to anybody and everybody to participate in a steering committee, a hemp steering committee meeting, to talk about the needs of the industry. So I would encourage people if they could get there for that 8 o'clock meeting to engage with the existing steering committee. And I do want to emphasize the steering committee is really just about any grower or processor in this state that wants to be part of. This is not a sign up. Now they do have a leadership committee, which
Mm-hmm.
I think again you're aware of, exists of about 9 people. But as a whole, they're looking for all the input they can get from anybody across the state.
Okay, great.
So encourage people for that.
All right. So that's 8 o'clock Tuesday morning. There's a
Correct. 8 to 9.
steering committee open session. Great. Okay. Cool. Well, yeah, if there's anything else you want to add, otherwise we can wrap it up and let you get back to your busy job there.
Thanks. No, again, I just appreciate what Lancaster Farming has done over the years to help us, and Team PA. Couldn't say enough about what they have done to get these things accomplished over the years, and to all the vendors, and to some of the additional sponsors beyond Lancaster Farming.
Right.
We really appreciate the support that we've gotten in the past, and what we're getting for this particular summit. So again, just want to thank everyone, and look forward to a really it'll be a little different, but I think will be a very rewarding summit for those that participate.
Good. And registration is still open. I think you can probably show up the day of and get in.
You can show up and actually, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But if you want to get registered beforehand, it's pahempsummit.com, and all of the information is there.
Yeah, and just one thing to add to that is that any current hemp grower processor here in the state of Pennsylvania, there is a discounted rate for you. So please go on the site and check out your discount.
Okay, great. So cool. All right. Well, Fred Strathmeyer from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I guess we'll see you in Harrisburg in a few weeks.
You will. And thanks again for taking the time, Eric. Much appreciated.
All right. So this really is the end of the episode this time. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Hope you learned something. I know I did. So yeah, I just appreciate you all out there listening to our show, coming back week after week. And what's crazy is, I can look at the sort of analytics of our audience, and I can tell that there's people not only all over the country, but all over the world who listen to our show. So that's great. Thank you. Anyway, my name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online, get yourself a subscription. So yeah, and if you ever want to get in touch with me, please do not hesitate. Just send an email. Send it right to podcast@lancasterfarming.com, and I will write back to you. Yeah, so I'll take questions, I'll take comments, I'll take concerns, all of those things. So anyway, all right, until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Season 2, Episode 40 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2022 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited and produced by Eric Herlock, and the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.